Hi, I'm McCue. I'm going to take you through some of the features within the SCADAfence platform solution that will help you investigate alarms or alerts within your environment that pertain to certainly anomalous activities or indicators of compromise or ultimately actual malicious activity. What I'd like to do first is to bring to your attention a unique feature of the SCADAfence platform, an area we call the risk analyzer. And here, what we are doing is representing the MITRE ATT&CK framework in a graphical form within the SCADAfence platform. And the objective here is to map activity where we've been able to identify something of interest or concern and raised an appropriate alert for that, and then lay that on top of the MITRE ATT&CK framework as you can visualize here. At the moment, the entire framework is in view. What I would do is firstly click to bring into focus the areas of interest where we've seen activity that do indeed map with actions or indicators of compromise that we see from the framework. You can see here that these are ordered by color. There's color coding to indicate items of more severity, going through items of lesser severity, down to items of the most more informative or least severe. And by then selecting one of these, we can start to drill into areas where we've identified some activity and then raise the alert. At this point, I'm now given a view of all sorts of alerts that relate to this kind of activity, building up from early indicators up to the specific item of interest. And then by clicking on the description icon, I can now look into an explanation of what the problem might be. So this was a reasonably high severity issue. It was an exposure event on the framework, which pertained to, if I remember rightly, some exposure potential credentials. And you can see here, it's really bringing into view the eternal blue issue that has been renowned as a problem to do with the SMB communications layer. We can see here we give an explanation of what the issue is. And so in this case, we've described what we believe the problem to be, why it relates to eternal blue, what platforms there could be a problem with, how it's used in some instances. And then we give a list of recommendations, mitigation action that could go forth to take place. Of course, you would then go off to investigate this. We could add comments and talk about what actions we've taken, and then record this as an ongoing case within the product, within the platform. And then ultimately, once completed, we would be able to resolve this issue. And we click the resolve button and that would close out the problem. There is more information here, and for any of the alerts that we raise, there will be more information. So for example, I can show and demonstrate what other devices are connected. In fact, I can give an impact view of the connections with other hosts. You can see here, some of these hosts also have the dots referring to activity that we've seen that could be potential expansion on the issue at hand. Where we've got relevant other communications, we'll show you what other communications exist. So in this case, we've got all of the communications that are coming off of this particular host. Obviously, the issue that we're talking about here is the SMB communications, but we have here, of course, HTTPS as well. And then if there was, in this case, there isn't, we'd be able to show industrial traffic. We can go and show what other alerts and logs we have in regard to this particular device. so other early indicators, and these go back historically. So you can see here some of the earlier actions and activities that took place, coming much closer to one of the issues closest to this particular one in hand. So this is a history of events that have occurred over time leading up to the event that we're currently investigating. And so that was looking at this information from the risk analyzer. As you can see, there are all different kinds of indicators of compromise pertaining to different levels of issue and activity. In fact, we can drill this down into just a simple pivot table where we can see for each type of issue and the type of tactic being employed, how many example alerts we have. We can expand this out and see the specific alerts again. Alternatively, we would certainly see this information normally in the alerts list on the SCADAfence platform anyway. So this would be the normal day-to-day full length of alerts that you would see, and you could come in here. These are currently ordered in severity, but you could have them ordered in event time, and then you would be able to triage these appropriately. Other types of issue can be identified. We've got here an example of actual malware that's trying to call home. In this particular instance, we're looking at some attempt to call back to an external IP address that we know to be related to the command and control for TrickBot. And so that's, again, summarized. It also mentions in this case, again, that it's often taken into account vulnerabilities with regards to, again, Eternal Blue. And here are some notifications about what kind of mitigation you could action. If it was related to industrial traffic, as I said before, you would certainly see the industrial traffic here. And again, I could expose out what type of communications we were looking at. In this particular case, I'm identifying some examples of reads and writes on the device from registers, but also some illegal functions as well. And in this particular case, we've got, I think, similar activity again. So this gives us an example of how deeply we are looking at and analyzing the data within the communications, and to what level we can really extract and understand information about the environment. And with regards to looking through and handling issues as they come up, that summarizes the types of activity and the alerts that you can see, and how you can go about investigating these alerts in a day-to-day operation that would ideally be situated to SOC operations. So now I'd like to show you also how we can utilize the traffic analyzer module within the SCADAfence platform in order to understand the behavior of the process that's taking place within our monitored environment. And so in this particular case, within my traffic analyzer section, where I have various modules or aspects of the module that I can look at, various areas to review conversations and protocols, and other aspects of the communications, Ethernet endpoints. The one of interest here in particular to me at the moment is something called the OT inspector, where we identify process variables and the exchange of the variable data that's taking place as part of the process, and how that data is identified and referenced in the communications. So for example, I have here some examples of some devices, PLC or BACnet devices, that have some communications taking place. And within these, I can see, in this particular case, I've got variable data with reference to some pressure for a tank, so a fluid pressure. And at this point, I can visualize on the screen this pressure reading that's being exchanged through the communications from the sensing device within the environment via the controlling device, so the PLC or BACnet device in this case, and that would be going back to the BACnet server and would be recorded and referenced over time. Similarly, we can also keep a record of this over a time frame, so we can show peaks and troughs of pressure in this case, and that can be shown in its normal highs and lows or as an average across the time frame. And that's what this view is giving us here at the moment. The objective in having this level of understanding and detail is that we can certainly profile this as part of the learnt information and then raise alerts if indeed the activity is deemed to be anomalous. But also it's possible to set threshold triggers, and they're also then able to reference and raise alerts in the event that specific thresholds are met. This would then be able to support other tools, probably safety system tools, in providing additional checkpoints and data against the variable information that's being exchanged through the communications, and thus indicate if the process is functioning correctly. In some cases, anomalous activity or even malicious activity can be identified through changes and deviation in these values and the communications that carry them. So that's the traffic analyzer. What I'll also do then is I'll look at the activity manager. What I'd also like to show today is the user activity analyzer. And here, what we're doing is we're identifying communications that relate to remote connections using protocols and communications around things such as SSH or TeamViewer, or even VNC, similar types of communications that would indicate some remote access activity. What I would like to do now is show you an example of tracking user activity within the SCADAfence platform. So using an area of the platform called the User Activity Analyzer, we're going to be able to map out and visualize remote communications that occur within the environment. And this will be based around communications such as SSH, VNC, or TeamViewer, similar types of communications where either remote authentication or remote communications take place. And so what we might decide to do is select one communication instance, click on this, and then see how this connection branches out to other connections in the environment. So in this particular instance, I've identified this initial connection coming in and it's hitting one of two devices. In each case, a different username is being utilized for that connection. As I click on these, I get detail about the host in question, or I can choose to continue to follow the chain of communications. So in this particular instance, again, this user has spawned another connection to another host further along. In this case, we've got various hosts, some of which have potential events around their activity. In other cases, we're just seeing expansion to other hosts within the environment. So we can see here that what's ultimately happening is we're able to track, as a connection comes into the environment, which devices it touches and which user accounts are used along that chain of connections. In this particular instance, we're using the same common username. In fact, actually, it did change slightly as it goes from one to the other. In some other cases, we can see that the new connection is being established using a new username. And the point being here is we'll be able to identify different instances of users being utilized in the environment. So thank you for taking the time to visualize and look at some of the capability built into the SCADAfence platform, and be sure to contact your representative over at OTD for further information about how you could obtain or test the SCADAfence platform, either in your own environment or just see demonstrations of the product. Thank you very much.